I believe the tide is running our way. I believe the momentum is with us as never before.
On the red earth of Garma in northeast Arnhem Land, a call to arms.
I believe there is room in Australian hearts for the statement from the heart.
The proposed question for the referendum revealed.
Something as clear as this. Do you support an alteration to the Constitution that establishes an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice?
The Prime Minister championing a three-line change to the Constitution that would enshrine a body to advise Parliament on policies relating to First Nations people.
It will be an unflinching source of advice and accountability, not a third chamber, not a rolling veto, not a blank cheque.
The PM acknowledging it's been a long time coming.
Over 200 years of broken promises and betrayals, failures and false starts.
Fear that failure could happen again.
There's been so much heartbreak and I think we should still be sceptical.
For me, the proof's in the pudding. I want to see action and reaction happening from this next.
The government calling for bipartisan support. And while the opposition says the PM's made a positive start, they want more detail on how the voice would work.
We're waiting the detail, and this is a step today on that road. We still can't answer the question, who will serve on the voice, what will it do, how will people be chosen?
Acknowledging the difficult history of referendums in this country, the Prime Minister wants to keep the process simple.
The legislation of the structure of the voice won't happen before the referendum. What I am not going to do is to go down the cul-de-sac of getting into every detail, because that is not a recipe for success.
And while the Prime Minister's commitment is unwavering, the challenge now is to take the nation on the journey with him.
The Uluru Statement is a hand outstretched. I am determined, as a government, as a country, that we grasp that hand of healing. We repay that faith. We rise to the moment. To work with you in lifting the words off the page and lifting our whole nation up.
Labor Senator Malarndirri McCarthy joins us now. Senator, Opposition Leader Peter Dutton says he wants more detail about how the proposed voice would work. Is that fair enough?
Well, Lisa, we had a significant weekend in Garma, and I think it's important for all Australians to see that this announcement by the Prime Minister is about the question, and a proposed question, and the three sentences that he's proposing for the Constitution. And what that is doing is about engaging with all Australians. For the past 10, 15 years, this conversation has largely been with First Nations people. And now we're opening up to the rest of the country.
But with limited detail, I mean, when you go back in history in this country, only 8 out of 44 referendums have got up. How easy is it going to be to get people to say yes without that detail?
Well, that's the challenge, isn't it, Lisa? And that's the beautiful thing about what took place on the weekend. The Prime Minister was clearly just saying, here it is, Australia. This is not just about First Nations people talking now. This is about the whole country. Talk about it around your coffee tables, talk about it in your boardrooms, talk about it in the streets. Do you want to see Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people recognised in the Constitution? And that's where we now, as political leaders on all sides of Parliament, need to have the dialogue as well. And this is where it actually begins, Lisa.
So how much more information is the public going to have before the vote?
Well, certainly in terms of the Parliament, I know we have the First Nations caucus in the Labor caucus. We're meeting tomorrow. We're meeting this week with Linda Burney to step out what happens from here. And I know that people across the country, especially those who've been very committed to this process, are also beginning from here. And there will be more things to say as we go along in the next few weeks.
But are you worried that if people decide there isn't enough information before the vote, that will affect how they choose to vote?
Look, I think that what we have to recognise here is that it's not until 1967 that we had the last referendum on First Nations people. And if people do their homework, they will recognise that this was a long journey in 1967 to get that support. And we have no doubt in the Australian Parliament, in the Australian Labor Party with the Prime Minister, that this will be an incredible challenge. But we are incredibly hopeful that people of goodwill in this country will want to see a better Australia going forward.
Do you think this will fail if you don't get bipartisanship?
Well, I think as the Prime Minister said in his speech on the weekend, we know that there is always the possibility of failure. But the deeper message here for us is that to not try is even worse.
So Senator Jacinta Price is a senator from the other side of politics from you. She's an Indigenous woman from the Northern Territory. She says there are already enough Indigenous voices in Parliament without this, and the government's priorities should be elsewhere.
Yeah, look, I'd certainly encourage the senator, as I do every other politician in the Parliament, to actually do their homework. Have a look at the committees and the inquiries that have taken place over the last 15 years. We are talking about substantial change to the Constitution, to the founding document in the Westminster system, to make sure and ensure that First Nations people are respected, irrespective of which government is in power. That's what we're talking about.
If there is a referendum on this and it does fail, how damaging will that be?
Well, we're not thinking about that. What we're thinking about now is how we go out across the country and bring Australians together on this core principle of the Uluru Statement from the Heart. And as the Prime Minister has said on many occasions, it is a generous statement. But deeply for me, as a Yanyuwa Garawa woman, I do want to see the Constitution changed to acknowledge my families, my people, because at the moment, we're not there.
OK, Senator, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks so much for your time this evening.
Thank you.